Well, hello and welcome to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar, helping you cultivate a life you love. So remember that your mindset is like a muscle and it needs work. You got to work at it, right? You're going to build and strengthen that mindset muscle. And in turn, you're going to find that life just gets a whole lot easier for you. You get into that flow state. And today's show, we're going to talk about big life changes. We've all had them, and if you haven't had them, they're coming in one form or another. And, big changes could be a new relationship, the end of a relationship, right? It could be a new job, it could be the loss of a loved one. Or the loss of a career. So there's so many big changes that we go through. Having a new child, right? Being a parent, that's a huge life change. And today we're going to focus on really how to navigate big life changes. And some of those are certainly expected changes, and some of them are unexpected, those sudden changes that can really knock you down to your knees and really shake you to your core. So, we're going to focus today on personal experiences. And my special guest today is Richard Nestor. Richard Nestor is a longtime former host of the Shopping Channel for about 23 years or so, and also he's completely reinvented himself. He is now pursuing a career in acting for fun. And also early retirement. So, experiencing a lot of life changes. And on top of that, he experienced some not so positive changes, and that really did shake him to his core. He lost his twin brother, and about 2 years, less than 2 years after that, another brother also passed away. So some really big challenges, certainly very difficult to go through. And he's here to share his experience and his story. And this is really all about, helping you learn how you can get through some of your biggest life challenges. And whatever your biggest challenges, that could be very stressful to you. We all have different stories, and I think we can all learn so much from each other. So I want to say hello and welcome to my dear friend, Richard Nestor. It is an absolute pleasure having you here on the show.
Tanya, thank you so much. By the way, you look absolutely beautiful.
Ah, you are a delight. You are a delight. Nothing has changed, Richard Nestor. It
I
is.
speak the truth, my dear. I speak the truth.
Ah, it's really wonderful to see, how far you've come in such a short period of time and experiencing a lot of change in, relatively, a few years. So let's go back a little bit in time. Now, you were a longtime host at the
Yeah.
Shopping Channel, loved by the nation, and you spent over 20 years, doing what you love. And I want to talk about that change first because a lot of people identify themselves with their job, with their career, what they do. And especially if you've been doing it for decades, as you had, what was it like for you now to leave that era and go into something new? Were you excited? Were you fearful? What was the process for you?
You know what? I think for me, it was, not even fearful or anything. I'm the type of person that my entire life, I've always had a plan. And if it was, just hypothetical, I'm always the type of person that I need rehearsal. So even future stuff, like how it started back, I think it was in 1997 when my father passed away. He was the first one in my immediate family to pass away. And then I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is real. Like, this really does happen. And then when my mother passed away in 2009, that's really how things changed. Because I mean, my situation. I've never really talked about this really publicly, but, I have had four brothers, and one being my twin, one being my older brother. And I have two brothers that I'm actually, their guardian right now. They're both mentally challenged. They're both fabulous. They both have full-time jobs, and they both have, they share an apartment. So everything is great that way.
Mhm.
But it's funny. I always felt like I was going to be a caregiver of that sort sometime in the future. So when some people always say, "Oh no, I never think about tomorrow," I think it was back in 97. That's when I started thinking, wow, what if something happened to this person, where does it leave my two brothers? So when I started at the shopping channel and everything was great, I mean, hey, like you said, I was there 23 years. I was doing prime time. I had no intentions of leaving the shopping channel whatsoever. I mean, I was only when this all my life change was when I was 55 years old, and you remember that well because you're the one that took the phone call, and I had no idea that I was going to be leaving or anything like that until my brother Randy passed away. And it was just not as if he was sick. He was on a trip to Italy. He was in Rome on vacation, one of his favorite places in the world. And then I get a text early in the morning, and it was from his partner, and all it said was, "I need your number," and I knew. So that to me was life changing. And then because right away it was just like a whirlwind. Now what do I do? Because he was my um, how would you say, he was my ally with my family, because after my mother passed away in 2009, he and I kind of took charge of looking after my brothers
Mm-hmm.
and everything else. Even though we both lived in Toronto, they lived here in Niagara Falls, but we still did, everything together. And that was the big thing right then and there, was that I can't stay here anymore. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to somehow get back to Niagara, because what's going to happen? Because I had an older brother who was, the three of them lived together, and they're the ones, and he was the one sort of kind of looking after them. If you want to put it that way. So when I just thought, well, I better make my way back to Niagara. And thank goodness I did, because after I, did the big move, I had to, I don't know why I had to give 6 months notice, but they wanted 6 months notice. So I gave 6 months notice. And then on December 16th, or just yeah, I think it was or December 20th, whatever it was, 2016 was my last time live on the air as a host. And I moved back to Niagara the following November. I'm here now for 5 years, but within the first 10 months, then everything was fine. Then my older brother passed away. So now out of seven of us, there's only three. So what I had rehearsed back in 1997, I just kind of played it like, and this happens to everybody. I mean, my tip to anyone, doesn't matter who you are in a family, you have to have a plan. And that, because you just never know when all of a sudden it's all going to be taken away from you. And you have to have some sort of an idea of, okay, where do I go now from here to go there to help somebody else? So that was that day when my brother passed away, and then I called you, and I was calling TSC that I couldn't make it to work, and you answered the phone. I don't even remember the phone call. I just remember I was just a blubbering idiot that particular.
Oh, I remember that phone call because I was so devastated for you. You're just, I mean, as soon as I heard your voice and the emotion on the end of that phone, I knew something was obviously extremely wrong. And just, the pain in your voice, it was just so intense, obviously, going through that. And so such a sudden shock for you to
Oh,
get the news as you did.
yeah.
But it's interesting, and I remember that, and I thought, even on that phone call, I'm like, typical Richard Nestor, the epitome of always caring for other people, ensuring that everyone's okay, and you made sure that someone was going to cover your shift. You're like, I'm trying to get a hold of this person, I can't get a hold of. I'm like, don't worry, it's covered. Yeah, but I said, don't, even if I have to stay.
Don't
This is the
remember
morning.
anything.
I'm like, even if I have to come back tonight, I said, don't
And I
worry,
know,
your
I
shift will
know
be
you did.
covered. And I just thought, wow, even, and that's just so true to your nature. You are a natural born caregiver, and I think for you, that's why it's important to have a plan. And to be quite
Oh,
honest, I'm not a planner. I kind of fly by the seat of my pants, and then yeah, I got to scramble to process some of these things. But I think that's actually a very helpful tool in the process of going through life changes, especially the ones that you can anticipate, the changes that we can expect, obviously the unexpected changes,
yeah,
those sudden
exactly.
changes, like, a death. You can't necessarily plan for all of those aspects. You can plan for some, of course, the after process, right? But not truly. And so that can be one way to alleviate some of the anxiety and the stress and the pressure, that would happen naturally from some of these big life changes. Thank you for being vulnerable and opening up, and sharing, because, you've obviously gone through a lot. I mean, even, you've lost both of your parents, two of your brothers. And I also know that, you're very close with extended family members, and you've also lost other family members who were, really close and important people in your life. And that's never an easy thing. So I'd love to talk to you about some of the ways that you were able to process your feelings, if you process them fully. And what did that look like? How did the healing journey begin? Because of course, obviously, it is a journey. And how did you start to get that cycle started?
Well, and thank you, by the way. I appreciate that. And it's true. I've always have been a caregiver, and that was always on the back of my mind. It was always like family first. That's just me.
Yeah.
And I've never mentioned it. Maybe you know this story, but I think it really, how it changed for me and how I dealt with it was when I all of a sudden I got this call. Well, I actually took my mother to the hospital. This was back in 2006 or something like that. And she was diagnosed, which we thought was pneumonia. So we go in, and then the doctor comes to, my mother's already taken away, and I'm just going, right? I just thought she had pneumonia, like she's fine. And he said, no, we discovered a huge tumor on her lung. So I went, oh my gosh. So how do I tell my brothers? And when it was all said and done, after many months of chemo and everything was fine, everything was perfect, and then she ended up getting ill after that. And then before she passed away, and this is something I just want to share with anybody, because it affected me, because it affected our whole family.
Mm-hmm.
That my mother was also which is somebody watching right now, was a compulsive gambler, and when she passed away, unbeknownst to me, because my mother, my three brothers, they all lived together. And then when my mother passed away in December of 2009, and I thought, well, okay, here we go. So after the funeral, I go home, and then I find out that she's lost the house. So my brothers all have to leave, and they didn't know that. I didn't know that. She lived for 2 months prior to that, knowing that. And I was I angry? Maybe for 3 minutes, because then I realized again how heartbreaking it was for her not to tell us for 2 months that this was going to happen. And it's so ironic, because in 3 weeks, talk about change. When my brothers, I still remember, I saw this piece of paper and it said, we were here today and you weren't here. And so I called him, and it was the lawyer that said, sorry, you got to go in 5 weeks. And this was like January the 6th, during a minus 30 degree, 3 foot of snow kind of winter. And the moment I spoke to that woman, she said to me, even on the phone at the lawyer's, aren't you shocked? And I said, no. And so right away I went into charge, because that particular day, I always have, when somebody, and I've been executor 5 times, I always have a file for somebody. So every time after the funeral, no matter where I go, I bring the file in case somebody asks for something. And I remember that day I was going to look for an apartment for my brothers, because I knew they couldn't stay in the house. Well, now we have a really good reason why they can't stay in the house. So I pull out, and I just said, okay, how about this apartment, which is literally a block away from my parents' house. And 12 years later, they're still living there, my 2 brothers. Wow. I phoned them and said, do you have a 3-bedroom apartment? Yeah, when can we see it? She said, would you like to make an appointment? I said, can we come in 10 minutes? In about an hour, I had an apartment just in those first few minutes. Staged the house the next day, sold the house 3 weeks later, paid off everything, because I had a plan. Yes. My brothers, my older brother, let's just say he was an older brother that was not, he didn't take charge, let's face it.
Yeah,
so,
you really were like, the older brother, for everybody
exactly.
in the family.
I was the older brother, the father, and everybody. And then of course, my 2 other brothers whom I love dearly, are mentally challenged. And all of them, after I told them what had happened, they're all looking at me like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Yeah. Pressure. That's pressure, right?
It is pressure, but everybody has 2 choices in life. I could have went into the fetal position on the floor, cried my eyes out. Oh, woe is me. How dare you? Look what you, I just went boom into take over charge. We're going to do this, 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 and this in 3 weeks. Everything was done. They're in their apartment, house sold, debts paid, everybody's happy. And it's just like, and why? Because back in 1997, when my father passed away, I knew then, wow, this is real. Okay, so he goes, then mom goes, and this one goes, and this, who's going to look after these two?
Mm.
And you know what? And that was my biggest fear. And I have to say, it is the easiest now. Now I'm living the dream. I've been retired for 5 years. I've done 5 plays. I've done 2 of them were musicals, which were extremely scary, but a huge challenge. And it was so
Wow.
much fun. And you know what? It just took me on a whole other path.
Yeah, that's it's really fascinating. And action, definitely taking action is so key. And sometimes, our mind gets overworked with all of the negativity of a situation or the sadness, the hurt, the pain that you can't see clearly. But if you can remove yourself from that and take the necessary steps, I mean, you took some massive action, right? You went into like, yes, let's
Because I
get
had
this
to.
done mode
I had
immediately.
I
And
had to.
I think that's great though, because not everybody, can have that strength. That takes strength. That takes perseverance to get through all of that, to push through, despite all the emotion that you're feeling as well, right? On top of that, and what I love, as part of that story is that there was really no blame, with your mother. You didn't sit there and
No,
say what a terrible thing, and it's like you looked
I felt
at
sorry for
her.
her.
Yeah, and that truly is a a heightened level of awareness where you can look at a situation from the other person's perspective so that it's not that blame. Because when we hold on to blame and anger, it actually hurts us. So when you can just release that, find that forgiveness, and that's truly a step in that forgiveness, is putting yourself in that other person's situation and understanding, what was their intention. And that's when I coach people, around forgiveness, because forgiveness is a huge piece of having a life that you love, is being able to forgive, all the wrongs, committed, you feel that have been committed against you, right, or the circumstances. And it's not always that easy. It's not easy, and it can be a really quick downward spiral when you start to blame other people, and you need to have an answer, why. And in a case where someone has passed away, and we'll take the case of your mom, being a compulsive gambler, and you had no idea, you found out about that. And you can get locked into the belief that I need to know why. Why did she do this? How could she do this? And when you get locked into that, you're never going to find the answer to that. You're just never going to know. And sometimes we have to reconcile with the fact that we will never know the answer, and have to be okay with that. And then really let forgiveness, find a place. So huge, wonderful kudos to you for that awareness, for sure. And also just being that natural caregiver, I think also allowed you to get into action mode because you're used to doing that. You've just that's innately who you are. I'd love to continue the conversation and dive a little deeper. And of course, we'll get into some of the amazing things that you're doing now in your retirement. But we are going to take a break here on Sauga 960. You're listening to The Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar, and we will be back with Richard Nestor after this. Well, hello, hello, and we are back here on Sauga 960. You're listening to The Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar, and today my dear friend and special guest is the one and only and the fabulous Richard Nestor. Many of you will know Richard from the Shopping Channel. He was a host of the Shopping Channel for over 23 years, much loved. I was going to say, around the nation, but beyond that, around the world. It's truly remarkable to have you here and sharing your story with us, Richard, and being vulnerable and opening up about your life experiences and big changes that you have gone through, because we all go through big changes in life, and you have experienced many through the death of your parents, to the death of 2 of your brothers, including a twin brother, going through an early retirement, changing your life, moving, picking up and moving cities, being a caregiver to, several people. So there's a lot of changes that you've gone through. So I really value that you're here sharing your story. So welcome back.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And it's like you were saying, it was so true though. I mean, I enjoyed my job. I had a good time doing it. And I was at that particular time, I was only 55. So I had no intentions of leaving
Oh,
whatsoever.
and they had no intentions of you leaving either. They were going to keep you there forever if they could, and they tried. I know they tried.
Kind of hard to do exercise shows from a walker, you know.
Mind you, if
But
anybody could do it, it would be you, Richard. I
well,
love
I
it.
would have tried.
I love it.
I would have tried. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But but everybody. But you know what? I always say there's no rule books that we all can go to. It's like like all of a sudden, I get that email that Randy passed away. It's not as if I went to the book of life and went, okay, your twin brother, identical twin brother, just died all of a sudden. Oh, this is what you're supposed to do, and this is how you're supposed to feel, and this is how you're supposed to change things. There's no rules. It's just like, okay, how do I go from now all of a sudden, and that particular time when it happened, it's funny, when we always went on vacation, Randy and I always called each other the day before, have a great trip, have fun, blah blah blah. And it was funny, I was on my way to work that night. He was going to Italy, so it was an evening flight, and I forgot he was even going away that day. So I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm going by the airport. And, wait a minute, Randy's going away. And he had no cell phone. He never had a cell phone. And I said, oh, well, he just forgot. And I'm just thinking, well, why wouldn't he call me? He's the one that was home all day going away. And then all of a sudden I didn't hear from him. So I went to work and I opened up my emails, and all of a sudden the first email I see is from Randy. And it was just, we did that once in a while, but that's the first time he ever done this, where he had sent all his how would you say, insurances and everything else to me just to have on file, just in case.
Wow, wow,
Okay.
wow.
So I printed everything out, put them in a file, and just left them at work, because I've done it to him, but he has never done it for me. And then I'm just thinking, okay. And then he was there for, I think, 2 weeks. And it was just a few days before the 2 weeks. That's when he passed away. And I'm thinking, I'm wondering if they know.
Yeah, it
It's
sounds like maybe he
it
had
just
sort of a feeling or premonition of some sort.
absolutely. So that particular time, that was just, to me, that's what just changed everything to where I am today. 5 years later, it's be 6 years for almost for Randy, but 5 years later, now living here and in my home, and it was that big change is because of that one incident, and the rest just kind of followed afterwards. But now that, like I said, I've been executor 5 times, unfortunately, it's almost to the point where you're thinking, you know what? Hey, this is part of life, and you can't hang on to things. We were talking, earlier about that, and blame and all this kind of stuff. And I just remember this one quote, one thing. When I do read books, I love to read. I'm, like a big big reader. I'm always reading biographies,
Yes.
and it wasn't Socrates or Plato or some how would you say it, some scholar. It was from Sophia. It was from Sophia Loren's book, and I remember her saying this, and I just remembered it so well. It said, the one line that she always said was, hate is like an acid. It eats away the person who hates, not the one hated. And I thought, you know what? And that's why sometimes you just have to let it go. When sometimes it's just like, forget about it. Whatever it happens to be, it's like, what, it's done. And I always think of somebody, what was going on in their life, like even people watching us or listening to us right now, or when we on the air. I remember when my uncle Alec, he passed away. He was the oldest of my father's brother. I became like a little bit of a caregiver before he passed away. And I remember it was in between shows, and he went into the hospital, and they told me, you got to come and visit. So I went to visit before work, and he's got less than 24 hours. And I went on the air, and then I got off the air, and I knew how we used to do. I used to do 7 to 9 p.m. And then I was off from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. and go on. And I remember the nurse calling me 20 minutes before I went back on air, and he said, well, he's passed away. And then, okay, now it's showtime, so people don't realize what we all have a life. We're all, we all have, something going on in our background, whether it's your dog passed away, or it's a financial problem, or somebody's sick, or somebody's divorcing, whatever. But you know what? Sometimes you just have to deal with it. There, like I said, there's no rule book, but some here, up here, and here, you have to, let it go. Let it go.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I think, absolutely, you're absolutely right. Where there is no right or wrong way, but there are techniques that can be helpful, right, to guide you through the next steps.
Absolutely.
But you have to
Absolutely.
really, right, tap into that feeling. And for you, that was, yeah, keep going, right? So it's like, I'm going to get back out there and I'm going to do the job and move forward, right? And some people, they're going to need some time, right? But you have to know your body, who you are, and how you're feeling. And I think the really key thing is to process emotion, not to suppress emotion, because when you start to suppress that emotion, then that is going to lead to dis-ease in the body, right? Because you're trapping all those emotions. They need to come out, or they're going to come out in an unhealthy way. When you're having an argument and then it's like, you overreact to something small. I mean, I've done that. I remember, for me too. I mean, I remember when my dad passed away. I was exhausted. I was beyond exhausted. I was working full time. I was going with my dad to all of his appointments,
I
spending
remember
hours,
I
at his
remember
chemo
that.
treatments, and then coming to work and spending hours there all day. Some nights having 2 hours of sleep and doing that for weeks on end. And I was irritable. I was angry at other people. I was blaming people for not stepping up. How could they do this? Why aren't they doing this? And don't they understand there's no time left, and I was irritable. And I know that was, because I wasn't processing things properly. And I took some time and I regrouped and I was able to, figure it out, after of course having a lot of wine as well in the process, which is not a good
That
thing,
helps.
right?
That
That's
helps.
that's what this is linked to. That's like denial. When you deny a situation or you just don't want to handle it because it's overwhelming, we will reach to external things to make us feel better, right?
Mhm.
Whatever that looks like to someone. And that could be overindulging in unhealthy foods, right? Or drinks, whatever it is, or people turn to drugs. And it really is the inability to process. And I think it's so important. So for you, in terms of some of these emotions that you had going on, but still having to be a caregiver for other people and still having to perform, on air, and, obviously be presentable and have that strength. How did you process your emotions?
Um, I was going to get through it. And like I said in the beginning, and maybe that's what I think everybody has to do is you have to have a plan. Whether because now that and I've always been, that's why I moved to Toronto in 1980. I always wanted to be an actor, is
Mm-hmm.
that I love rehearsal. And I rehearse. I would have many sleepless nights. Like I said, when it started in 97, when my father passed away, and I would go, oh my gosh, this is real. What am I going to do? And it always, and then it's, and I always think everything is connected to everything.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like we all have this sort of plan. Sometimes we divert from where we're going or but somehow we get back on track. But to me, it was always rehearse it because you're not immune to it. When I hear, especially, you know, married couples with children and say, oh no, I don't want to talk about a will. I can't talk about a will. It's oh, no, I'm no. Yes, talk about a will, get a will done, put it in the file, and it's done. Like it's almost like, okay, put your big, adult pants on now. And you know what? You know, birth, I wish they would even teach it in school because they do so much about when a child is born, but when somebody dies, which is part of life, there's, we're guaranteed two things, death and taxes. That,
Mm-hmm.
right now it's like, yes, this is a part of life, but how do I deal with that? When people used to say, I don't know how to study when I was in school, because they never really showed you how do you study? How do I actually pick up a book and study? It's just like, okay, I know how to, we have these birthing classes and we go to, how to change a diaper on these little dolls. And we learn all these wonderful things. But then all of a sudden somebody just says, I'm just going to pick up my dry cleaning, and then they don't come back. How do you deal with that? So somehow we all have to be prepared. We have, death is just as much as part of as living. So to me, rehearsal, be prepared, and just and just have it always at the back of your head. You just have it somewhere in your little pocket somewhere that this is what's going to happen if such and such. And
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have children or you are that caregiver, or even if it's just your dog or your cat, how is this going to change my life without having my little fluffy here with me? There's questions that have to be answered, and when people avoid things, that's when you get into trouble. when you start avoiding things and, putting things away in drawers that you don't want to open and such, you know what? Rehearse. It's all part of life.
Mm. Yeah, so interesting. Well said. Well said. And I imagine that for you, there was a lot of uncertainty of, even though you had a plan, there must have been a lot of uncertainty as well, that fear of uncertainty, because when you leave the familiar, it opens up another world, right? So leaving your job, leaving your city, starting anew, what did that feel like for you? Was fear a part of the equation? Did you go through any of the stages of anger or fear?
No, with me, it was no, it's because I was born and raised in Niagara Falls. I
Hmm.
moved to Toronto, lived there 36 years, and then I just came back home. So it's not as if, I left Toronto and say, okay, now I have to move to Shanghai or I'm
Yeah,
moving to Dallas, Texas. That might
yeah,
be a different thing, but it was familiar. It's still home. My big thing was because even long before my father died or Randy or anybody, my brothers, it was always, okay, what do I do with my brothers? They're named Johnny and Kevin. And I said, do I bring them to Toronto? But they're just, they're so focused on their life in Niagara and they have their friends and their jobs. There's no way I can pick them up and then bring them to Toronto. And I'm thinking, no, and I'm thinking, gosh, they'll go on the subway and they'll get lost and they'll never see them again, and all this kind. So I thought, no, I think it's be best maybe somehow I'll go back there, and that's how it all happened, But again, I had a plan. I always knew I was coming back here. Always knew that.
yeah. And it's so interesting that you say that, because I mean, we've worked together for years, right? About
Yes,
17 years. And
yes,
I know for years your plan was to retire in Niagara, to work at a winery, and to be in plays. And
yes,
you retired in Niagara, you moved to Niagara, you worked at a winery, and you've done several plays now. And also part of that equation was always being there for your brothers. That was something that you've always said, so it's interesting, right, to see that plan really unfold so perfectly for you. And now you're doing what you love. So, let's talk a little bit about that first moment of, actually being in a play and auditioning. Because again, let's keep in mind that you were in a career for 23 years and now trying something different. I mean, many people can relate to that who are listening right now, that, and I think a lot of people right now in this moment are trying to reinvent themselves, maybe
oh,
through
absolutely, of
necessity, right? And
course.
so what was that like for you to just say, all right, let's go for something different?
And again, as I said earlier, where you just like everything's connected to everything. You just put
Yeah.
it out in the universe. That it's funny that the day I had my resume on Indeed, and I wanted to work in a winery, so I think I did put them on different wineries. And then when I auditioned, which you did come to see that play, the dining room in Niagara on the Lake,
Yes, loved it. Hmm.
and that thank you, that play and the job at the winery I got on the exact same day.
Wow, meant
So
to
it's like
be. Yeah.
the Rob from the producer of that play called me and said, you got the part. And then all of a sudden, Chris, who from Culinary Winery, says, you know what, I was just reading your resume, it's quite interesting, but he said, would you like to work here? I said, absolutely. And so and it was fun, and to me it was just like a whole new adventure again. And of
Yeah.
course, I have many people saying to me when they see me at the winery, they'd be going, aren't you Richard from the Shopping Channel? I said, yeah.
Oh, I love it. I
Just
love
a
it,
whole new life here.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And really a great moment of knowing that, things are working for you, not against you. So sometimes people, especially going through challenges, think, oh, the world is against me, everything is going wrong. But it's like, no, the universe is conspiring for you. And there are challenges in life that we're, bound
Absolutely.
to go through, that we can't avoid.
Been
And
there,
that
done.
will be challenging, right? But there's always something good. So is there one big lesson? What is, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but is there one big lesson for you, that a takeaway going through your biggest challenges?
I used to say this to when people would, I mean, you know what I went through back with Randy, and then my older brother who had pancreatic cancer, and he passed away. And my aunt, I was with her. I mean, I looked after her. I mean, she had no children, so I was like her son for
Mhm.
for the 60 years.
And your
And
travel companion, you
oh,
guys
oh,
traveled for years
we
together.
went
Yes.
we went on over 40 holidays together. She
Wow.
so
Oh.
it's so yeah. So to me, I don't. Uh, it would be just that it's hey, it's just part of life. You just have to do it. I mean, I'm just that type of person. I like to look after people, and I do get a lot of benefit from it. But and yeah, I guess maybe I'd be a little anal. I'd say I like to be the one in charge. No, let's do it this way because this is the way I've been rehearsing it. This is the way I think
Ah.
this is going to work. And it's just it just always I'm going back to it. Just have a plan.
Mm.
You can't just fly on the seat of your pants because I mean look what happened last year. I mean when I finished Mamma Mia, which our last performance was March the 8th, and then on March 13th, there was a Friday the 13th. I went with a friend. He had ballet tickets, and I haven't been to ballet in years and years. So I went to Toronto. It was just not even a week later and the play, they wouldn't allow it. And then the world changed and it's
Mhm.
still the same right now. And I'm thinking, you just never know what all of a sudden things are going wonderfully well. And all of a sudden, boom, something, but this one was a task and a test for the whole world. What happened now? Because to me, it just taught a lot of other people. I feel so bad for the people that have lost their lives. I'm
Mhm.
so upset for right now people, small mom and pop businesses,
Mhm.
all these that are maybe losing their businesses and such. But then also it's also okay. This is Mother Nature. This is the universe saying to us, hey, wait a minute. Did I really need to have that 4 cars in the driveway and I have to have the next phone? Because at one point last year, all of a sudden it wasn't the Lexus or the diamond ring. It was toilet paper. Everybody wanted. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
crazy. Yeah,
Because all of a
absolutely.
sudden, it's like I think now people might be rearranging their lives, saying, "Okay, you know what? I think maybe it's best to have a little bit of a nest egg. Maybe it's best that maybe we won't order out as much. Maybe this. I think everybody's kind of taking, some sort of, when it comes to their lives now, they say they're kind of maybe revamping things, saying,
Yep.
I think you should really look at things now, a little differently.
Yeah, I agree. It's an opportunity to re-examine, what is the most important in your life, and to let go of some of the things that no longer
Yeah.
serve you, and to have more of what it is that you want, and that is actually truly soul fulfilling, not the external, poise, so to speak, right? I mean, that really never makes you happy, long term, right? Maybe it gives you some pleasure, but it's not really the deep, fulfilling type of happiness, right? That I think is truly the goal. So we're going to take a break and we're going to continue the conversation here on Saga 960 with my special guest, Richard Nestor. I'm Tania Kolar, and we will. Well, hello. You are listening to the Mindset Mentor on Saga 960. I'm your host, Tania Kolar. My special guest today is a dear friend of mine, Richard Nestor. Richard, by the way, was a long time host at the Shopping Channel for, oh my goodness, about 23 years, and loved by the nation. I mean, everybody loved Richard, and nobody expected Richard to leave. And worked tried to keep him there as long as possible, but through some life challenges, crises, he is reinvented himself and decided that priority was early retirement, and now taking care of his brothers and just being close to family and starting a new path. So, Richard, I want to talk about what you're up to now. I know that you started doing plays, so I'd love to delve into that and really what's next because you, my dear, are the ultimate planner. So I know you've got a plan. So let's
Well,
talk about what that plan looks like.
well, I haven't planned what I'm having for dinner tonight, but
Oh, you dropped the ball. You're human after all. Oh, so
but other
funny.
than that, right now it's, well, like everybody else, we're just at the mercy of what's going on in the world right now. But it's like the ropes are loosening up a little bit. So it's getting better. It's getting better.
Mm.
What I didn't like at first, because I do have an agent, I've been auditioning for the last little while. And then, you're doing self tapes and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not a lighting director and I'm not a technician at all. But now I'm enjoying them. So I'm doing a lot more auditions. And lately they have a new section for voiceovers, which I've always loved to do. I wanted to do, I should say. And now I've been getting a number of auditions for cartoons and been having a blast. First of all, when you're doing a voiceover, you don't have to comb your hair. So that's a bonus to me.
Yeah, yeah. No
I
suit and
kind of got
tie.
duty.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
I've been doing that and enjoying that very much. And just, plays right now. I mean, the last one I had done was 2020 because that's when the world completely changed. That was Mamma Mia. And that to me was I think my biggest challenge because I'm not a trained singer. I sing in the car, the odd karaoke, resort karaoke or something. So to actually get a main part and everybody knows the story of Mamma Mia, it was a lot of fun and I've learned so much. So I recommend anybody watching who wants to be an actor, an actress, they want to be in front of the camera, do a play because no classroom, no textbook is going to teach you what you learn. I mean, all of a sudden, I was nervous when I'd be singing, I was talking, I'm doing my dialogue, then I have to burst into song. And then I have to stop. And then I got the band, the orchestra at their mercy and everybody else. And then I do more dialogue. And then I have to go back singing. I have to listen to that word that I have to jump in. You know what? It was terrifying, but I loved every single minute of it.
Oh, so good. Listen, it takes a lot of courage, to get up on that stage and perform and to sing, given the fact that you are not a trained singer.
And solos. I had a solo, for goodness sake, in front of
Whoa,
so many
yes.
people every night. I was like, ah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I mean, really, you got to pat yourself on the back and give yourself some self-love and credit for
It's
taking those
terrible.
chances. And it is terrifying. And see, the flip side of that is when we're so fearful that it's paralyzing and we don't want to take action. So it's so important to, take action in even in those most fearful moments, take action, do what you fear the most because you will gain so much confidence from that. Did you find that you felt empowered doing that?
Oh, absolutely. Because you know what you're saying, it made me realize every play, all five of them, and I mean this honestly to all of your listeners out there, every single play, I was going to drop out. I can't do
Mm,
this. I'm
yeah.
not good enough. I can't do this. There's no way. Why, they're going to find out that I'm a fraud, that I don't know what I'm doing. I can't figure this out. Why would they choose me and not that person? They were better than I,
Mm.
on every single play, I was going to drop out. And I just said, no, I can do this. Then I started having fun. And then all of a sudden, it may take that one person to know the dance step and the number, 4 times. Well, it may take me 14 times. I rehearsed so much at home on my own, but I did it. I
Yes,
did it. So
yes.
can check it off the box now. Yeah.
Amazing. Yes, well done. That's the key. You did it and you persevered, despite the inner critic, that awful voice in your head telling
All
you that
five.
you're not enough. Yeah.
Yeah. All five plays.
So it's great. I love that you're just being real and raw.
But it's not just about me. When I was thinking, because after we started rehearsal, I'm going to go back to Mamma Mia, but all the other plays and other situations kind of fall into that, where once I started getting into it and I was still like, I couldn't reach that note, or I'm still having a problem with this. And why am I doing this? And there was 62 or 63 of us in the cast, plus the orchestra and then the huge backstage people. And I'm thinking, you know what, I'd be letting them down, not saying that I'm Mr. Special or something, but then all of a sudden they'd have to find somebody else. And I'm thinking, you know what? So when any situation, it's not just about you, just how is it going to affect? It'd be nice just to be, a little bit more, how would you say, kind and polite to others to see how would what you don't like about yourself or whatever, but how's that going to affect other people's jobs that day, or how's it going to affect what they're doing at the same time. So to me, it was always okay. No, I can do this. It's just like math was not my forte, but finally, when you finally would do an equation and you got it. And it finally sunk in and went, oh my gosh, it was just like doing these plays. It's like what all of a sudden you think, wow, now I get it. Okay. And then you're comfortable. Then all of a sudden that confidence that was somewhere else starts to come back and you say, yeah, I got this. I got this. But nobody knew in the play that I was going to, all of five of them, no, I'm not doing this. I can't do this. Tomorrow I'm going to call them and say, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not me. I'm just too,
Wow.
it's, hey, you just do it. You just,
Yeah.
or you know what, you're good. I don't want my whole life to be when I'm on my deathbed going, what if? Just I wanted to be like,
Yes.
wow, wasn't that a great time?
Wow, good for you. Absolutely love that. Great, great advice. Certainly, just just go for it, right? You just, even though the doubt creeps in, we've all had that self-doubt. You gotta just keep on going. I love it, love it. So, what about any other things like exercise and diet? I'd love to talk about that because these are definitely some things that we can incorporate when we are going through big life changes that can help us to better transition. So staying focused on a healthy diet,
Oh,
and exercising. Was that part of your, self-care in the process?
always, always. And you know that, I mean, we were blessed at the shopping channel. I mean, I had every piece of equipment, we all got, whether it was the Billy Blank's tapes or whether it was a Pilates machine or Total
Yeah.
Gym. And,
Mhm.
I've always been into, I mean, in the 80s, I was, I wore out my Jane Fonda workout tape. I did, the 20-minute workouts that you would see on the city TVs,
Yeah.
I was always, in my mother's house and my parents' house in the 70s, my feet were underneath the sofa doing sit-ups and everything. So I've always done something. And
And you
I mean,
you and I danced together on air with Louis Van Amstel. Yes.
yeah, yes, we did. And
Doing a workout, a dance aerobic
I,
workout. Yeah.
I sweated a lot. And now, I mean, that was another thing. The moment I moved here, we moved here in November, and then January, I said, I'm going to join a gym. And I did. And I had a personal trainer for 4 years. That kind of went to the wayside because of COVID.
Mm.
So I'm doing stuff at home, and I've been doing right now, I think I'm on day 35 or 36 of Pilates on the mat, just floor Pilates, which, boy, that is quite a challenge. But you know what? And you have to do that. I mean, people look after their cars better. They look after their floors and what oil they should put in their car and what gasoline. And you only get one of these. You know what? You got to do a little tune up every once in a while.
Yeah,
So
absolutely
I've always
do.
been a fan of that. And everything else, like when you're saying food, in moderation. Yes. Do I have chips once in a while for dinner? Yes. But the next day it's going to be a salad. And hey, everything in moderation, whether it's a gym or you're doing something at home. And you know what? Life is too short to sacrifice everything.
I love it. I love it. Well, Richard Nestor, unfortunately, we are out of time. I'd love to chat with you longer. It's always such a pleasure, and I thank you so much for joining us and being your fabulous self, and also helping and taking us inside your world, which is so helpful to other people going through big life changes and the challenges that we all will face.
Pleasure was all mine. Love you. Thank you.
Ah, I love you, Richard Nestor. Well, everyone, that's a wrap for today's The Mindset Mentor. And make sure that you work out your mindset. Remember, it's like a muscle that needs to be strengthened and conditioned. So join me next Tuesday at 1 p.m. for your next mindset workout.